My name's Justin. I'm 29 now, and up until last year, I honestly thought I had a pretty solid understanding of what family was supposed to be. Not the sugar-coated version you see on greeting cards, but the kind you shape your life around, even if it means dragging more than your fair share of the load. I was always the quiet one. The dependable son. The guy who never forgets a birthday and sends flowers just because. The one who steps in when things fall through the cracks, usually before anyone even realizes there was a crack to begin with. But never in a million years did I imagine I'd be the one holding up a family that made me feel like I was completely replaceable. That realization didn't slam into me all at once. It crept in, slow and quiet, like rot settling under the floorboards, hidden until the whole thing starts to collapse. Growing up, I was the middle kid. My older brother, Paul, was the golden child, football star, everyone's favorite, always surrounded by people like he had his own spotlight. My younger sister, Emily, was treated like royalty the moment she arrived. And me? I was the one pulling solid B+s and constantly being told I could do better if I just applied myself more. I didn't complain. I kept my head down, landed a scholarship, moved out, and eventually started a small IT company. It barely scraped by for the first few years, just me, instant noodles, 16-hour days, and getting ghosted by nearly every investor I pitched to. Somehow, after 3 brutal years, it actually took off. The strange thing. When I was barely making rent, they barely said a word. But the second money started coming in, suddenly I was part of the family again. It began with little things. My dad asked if I could pitch in to cover the rest of Paul's car payments, just until that promotion came through. Then it was Emily's college tuition, because apparently financial aid didn't stretch far enough. Next came the roof repairs at my parents' house. Then the heating system gave out. After that, it was the kitchen remodel my mom had always dreamed about. And before I knew it, I was footing the bill for 3 households and still getting texts like, "Hey, can you Venmo me for the groceries?" At first, I didn't think much of it. I was genuinely thankful that I was in a position to help. I told myself I was investing in something bigger, a legacy, maybe. I figured I'd be able to look back one day and say, yeah, I made life better for the people I care about. But over time, the way they acted, like they were entitled to it, like none of it was a big deal, started to gnaw at me. Thanksgiving was the moment things really shifted. I hosted that year. Not to show off, but because, for the first time in my life, I had a home with space for everyone. I had the whole thing catered, hired a cleaner, even set up a fire pit in the backyard. Not a single person offered to help, not even with clearing plates. Midway through dinner, Paul stood up to give a toast about how lucky we all were to have each other and how family always shows up when it counts, without once acknowledging that I had paid for every bite on the table. Emily brought some new boyfriend and spent most of the night glued to her phone. My dad. He went on and on about how tough things were in his day and how we don't know what real hardship looks like. I smiled through it. But inside, something had already started to shift. I was pulling away, quietly. Then came the night that broke it all. Just a regular Tuesday, a couple months after Thanksgiving. I had just wrapped a long meeting and got home to a voicemail from my dad. His voice was tight, cold, sharp in that particular way dads can be when they're aiming to wound. He said, "All you do is take. You've never given this family anything worth remembering. If you had any pride, you'd stop acting like we owe you and just leave." I sat there stunned. For a second, I honestly thought I'd misheard. So I played it again. "All you do is take." I didn't scream. Didn't call back. I just stared at my phone for a while, then walked over to the window and looked out at the city lights I used to find so comforting. Something in me broke, not loudly, but in that quiet, final way. Like an old hinge giving out under pressure. That night, I packed a bag and walked out the door. No big scene. No dramatic goodbye. I didn't even leave a note. I just told my assistant to pause every automatic payment linked to their accounts. A clean, silent break. 3 days went by. Then a week. Not a word from anyone. No texts. No calls. It took nearly a full month before someone even noticed. Emily was the first. She called late one Friday, sounding rattled. "Justin, hey. I just checked my school portal and it says my tuition hasn't been paid this month. Did something happen with the account?" She was trying to play it cool, but I could hear the panic under her voice, the kind of fake calm you put on when you're trying not to sound desperate. I sent back one text, "Thought I never gave this family anything." That was it. No explanation. No follow-up. She didn't reply. But within the hour, I had 4 missed calls from Mom, 2 from Paul, and 1 from an unfamiliar number. The voicemail from my dad. Honestly, it was almost funny in a twisted way. "Justin, we need to talk. Whatever this little stunt is, it's not funny. Your sister's future is on the line. No apology. No ownership. Just the same voice, full of expectation. Like I was still supposed to pick up the slack." That weekend, I booked a flight to Denver. I'd never been before, but I needed somewhere far enough away to feel like I'd escaped Earth's gravity. I found a quiet Airbnb up in the mountains. Slept better than I had in years. For the first time in forever, I didn't check my inbox. I ignored every message. I let the world keep spinning without me in it. And back home, that's when the whole thing started to unravel. Emily got a notice from her school about a pending withdrawal due to non-payment. Paul's car, still unpaid, got repossessed. When my parents' mortgage payment bounced, that's when the whole foundation they'd built on my silence finally started to crack. Suddenly, they were reaching out to cousins and extended family, spinning their version of the story. They said I'd vanished out of nowhere, abandoned all my so-called responsibilities. But the thing is, when too many people already know what's really been going on, it's hard to rewrite the narrative. A few of my cousins. They'd seen it all play out for years. One of them, Mila, my mom's niece, messaged me out of the blue. She wrote, "I've always admired how patient you are, but I'm honestly relieved you finally stopped being their safety net." That hit me harder than I expected. Because the truth is, I wasn't looking for payback. I just wanted peace. But once you take away the one thing they used to control you, once they realize they need you way more than you ever needed them, that's when everything starts to unravel for real. I stayed in Denver for a week, doing pretty much nothing. Every morning, I'd walk to this quiet little coffee shop near the Airbnb, journal for a bit, then just roam around the city. It was like I was relearning how silence felt when it wasn't filled with guilt or obligation. No buzzing phone. No last-minute requests. Nobody asking, "Hey, can you do me one more favor?" At first, the calm felt almost unnatural, like I had to train myself not to flinch at the sound of someone else's disappointment. By the second week, I'd rented a car and driven out to Boulder. I went hiking alone, something I'd always wanted to try but never made time for. Every time I thought about planning a trip for myself, someone back home needed rescuing. A broken air conditioner. A maxed-out credit card. Once, Emily even called me from a Cancun resort saying she lost her wallet and needed emergency money wired to her. That memory popped into my head while I stood on the edge of a cliff trail, the wind cutting through my jacket, the entire valley wide open below me. I actually laughed out loud. A real, belly-deep laugh. It bounced off the rocks around me like an echo I didn't know I'd been holding in. It took nearly 3 weeks before my mom finally reached out with something other than snide voicemails. She sent an email. The subject line just read, "We need you to come home." No greeting. Just a long block of text that opened with, "I don't know what's gotten into you," and spiraled into, "Your father is furious." Then came the classic guilt trip, "We've done so much for you," followed by the closer, "Family doesn't abandon family." I stared at that line for a long time. Family doesn't abandon family. Except they did. Over and over. Every time they treated me like a walking ATM. Every birthday they ignored. Every time they dipped into my bank account without a thank you. Every holiday where I faded into the background while Paul gave his speeches and Emily got gift after gift. They didn't call it abandonment. They called it tradition. I didn't write back. Instead, I forwarded the email to Matt, my lawyer, the one who helped me set up a trust years ago. I told him to start transferring the rest of the education funds to a scholarship for first-gen college students. People who actually needed support. People who wouldn't mock me behind my back while draining my accounts dry. Then I asked him to check the deed on the lake house, the one my parents used every summer. The one I paid off in full under the lie that it was a shared family asset. Turns out, my name was still on the paperwork. So I made a decision. That Sunday morning, I booked a flight back home. Not to patch things up. Not to be shamed or guilt into anything. I went back to gather evidence, plain and simple. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. I landed around noon, grabbed a rental car, and drove straight to my parents' house. The same house I'd helped restore when my dad threatened to sell it unless someone paid for the water damage. It looked exactly the same, familiar, but fake. Like a set from a show pretending to be a real home. Paul's old pickup was in the driveway. I figured he'd moved back in after they repossessed the car I'd been helping him pay off. I didn't bother knocking. I still had a spare key my mom forgot I had. As soon as I stepped into the living room, I heard their voices. Paul was saying, "He's being dramatic. He'll come crawling back once he stops sulking." Then Emily's voice, softer. "I just don't get why he's doing this. I mean, it's not like it costs him that much, right?" My dad muttered something I couldn't make out, and then said loud and clear, "Justin's always been the weakest. Hides behind his computer. Thinks money makes him important." I stood there in the hallway, completely unseen, listening as they tore me apart like I hadn't been the reason they had electricity, hot water, or working cars. I didn't cry. I didn't burst in and start shouting. I didn't even feel angry. What I felt was clarity. They never really saw me. Not as a person. I quietly stepped back outside and drove to the lake house. I walked in, looked around the open-plan kitchen, and stood in front of the wall of family photos, none of which included me. Then I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures for the real estate listing. By that night, Matt had everything he needed to start the sale process. That was Saturday. Monday morning, I sent one final message to the family group chat. "You said I never gave this family anything. So, in the end, I gave them exactly what they'd always acted like they wanted, distance. No more tuition payments. No more covering car loans. No more fixing roofs or chipping in for the memories they built without me. I was done." I left the group chat. Blocked every number. I figured that would be it, clean break, no lingering drama. What I didn't expect was just how tangled the web had gotten, how fast everything fell apart the moment I cut my end of the rope. Within days, Emily was facing expulsion. Paul, fired after skipping too many shifts, probably trying to fix problems I used to solve. And my parents? Let's just say the bank wasn't too thrilled about a mortgage they suddenly couldn't cover. As for me, I was already halfway to the airport, boarding a flight to Tokyo. This time, it was first class. No guilt, no strings attached. But the real twist? It came when they tried to crawl back. I was somewhere over the Pacific when my phone lit up with everything I'd been missing. Dozens of missed calls. Voicemails from numbers I didn't recognize, probably friends of Emily, or people hoping to play mediator on my family's behalf. There were texts from my dad that started off sounding like threats, but quickly devolved into desperate, broken lines like "We didn't mean it like that and you're still our son." That one actually made me laugh. I didn't listen to the voicemails. Didn't open the attachments. I just watched the notifications pile up like a digital slideshow of panic. It's wild, really, how people who swore you never gave them anything suddenly have perfect memories once what you gave is gone. Tokyo was exactly what I needed. Clean streets. Quiet moments. Complete anonymity. I spent my days drifting between temples and arcades, letting my mind breathe for the first time in years. No weight on my shoulders. No emergency waiting on the other end of a phone call. For once, I wasn't anyone's plan B. I wasn't the fixer. I was just me. 2 weeks into the trip, I finally unblocked one person, Mila, my cousin. She'd only messaged me once during the whole collapse. No guilt trips. No drama. Just, "Whenever you're ready to talk, I'm here." Not to fix anything. Just to listen. After I got back, we met up at a cafe near her apartment. She brought her laptop with her. "I want to show you something," she said, sliding it across the table. It was a Reddit thread, of all things. Emily had posted under a throwaway account, asking strangers for donations to help her stay in school after a family emergency. In her version of the story, I was the unstable one. Said I'd abandoned my responsibilities without warning. Claimed I was having some kind of breakdown. And people believed her. They were donating. Strangers. Mila gave me a tight, sad look. "She's raised almost $6,000. I figured you'd want to know." I stared at the screen. It didn't make me angry, just tired. Sad, really. There it was again. That same old narrative, rewritten so she could play the victim. But this time she wasn't just spinning it for family. She was monetizing it. Selling a story to strangers for sympathy. And the worst part? She still didn't get what she'd done. That night, I didn't rage post. I didn't send some long, emotional message. Instead, I did something quieter. I pulled every receipt I had, every transfer I'd made toward her tuition. Screenshots of textbook funds, dorm payments, even the time I wired money so she could buy a new laptop her freshman year. I uploaded them all to a private Imager album. No names. No big dramatic captions. Just dates, amounts, and transaction confirmations. And then I left a single anonymous comment on her Reddit post. Before you donate, maybe ask where the other $95,000 went. Some people forget who helped them when the help stops. It didn't blow up. Didn't need to. Within a day, the post was removed by moderators for suspicious activity. The comments turned. That was the first real consequence any of them faced. The second came a week later. I got a certified letter at my office, from my dad. Not handwritten. Typed. Like something you'd expect from a lawyer or a company threatening legal action. It started off with, "We are formally requesting a meeting to discuss the breakdown of our family dynamic." I nearly choked laughing. Like they were trying to schedule a board meeting to fix a family they'd spent years tearing apart. But buried in all the polite legal jargon was the real reason for the letter. They wanted a cut from the lake house sale. Apparently, they felt they had emotional equity in the property. I slid the letter across the table to Matt, my lawyer. He read it, raised an eyebrow, and smirked. "Want me to remind them that emotional equity isn't a legal thing?" I nodded, and he did one better. He sent back a copy of the original agreement, signed by my dad, back when I first paid for the lake house. His exact words, in writing, "I acknowledge that this home is purchased by and remains the property of Justin, last name. I relinquish all future claims." He must have forgotten about that document. Or hoped I had. Either way, that shut them up pretty quick. But the quiet didn't last. Not once word got out that I was planning to sell the main house too. And that's where we can pick back up, unless you'd like changes to this portion before moving on. Would you like me to continue with the next part of the story? Years ago, I loaned my parents a large sum of money under a verbal agreement, back when they were struggling to keep up with the mortgage. They never paid a dime back. Matt, ever thorough, tracked down every transfer, every bank record. He compiled the entire financial timeline, and we filed a lien on the house. Turns out, they owed me over 80 grand, which meant I had the legal right to force a sale. That night, Mila called me. Her voice was tense. "Justin, they're losing it. Your mom called mine, sobbing. Your dad's talking about going public on social media." I let out a breath. "Let him," I said. "I've got receipts. Let's see who wins that PR war." But what I didn't tell her was that this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about closure. Because what none of them ever understood was that I'd given them everything, my money, my time, my loyalty, and they mistook it all for weakness. They treated me like a faucet, something they could twist on whenever they were thirsty. Now they were learning what thirst actually feels like. And yet, the moment that brought me the most peace hadn't even happened yet. That came the day the house finally went up for auction. I parked across the street early that morning, watching in silence. The air had that sharp, dry chill that always seemed to settle over the neighborhood just as fall started creeping in. It was surreal, looking at the house I grew up in, this place that had soaked up so much laughter and tension, love and disappointment, with a plain white foreclosure notice planted right in the front lawn. "Auction today. No trespassing." I got out of the car, hands shoved in my coat pockets, and walked slowly toward the front door. It was already open. Matt was inside, talking with the auction rep, a middle-aged woman with a clipboard and the kind of expression that said she'd seen 100 families crumble just like this. When he saw me, he gave a small nod. "You don't have to be here for this," he said gently. "I want to be," I replied. And I did. Not to gloat, not to rub it in, but because some moments are too important to look away from. Some moments deserve to be witnessed, remembered, honored. I walked through the living room slowly, like I was trying to soak it in one last time. There was still a dent in the hardwood where Paul had chucked a baseball inside. The carpet still had that faint stain from when Emily spilled nail polish and blamed it on me. The wall where my parents used to hang report cards and childhood drawings, until, one day, they quietly stopped adding mine. It was strange, how little of myself I saw in that house. Like I'd just been passing through all those years. Like I'd been a guest in my own family story. I stepped into the kitchen next. That one hurt more. I remembered standing at that counter, peeling potatoes for Thanksgiving. Staying up late to help Mom prep for holiday dinners. Scrubbing dishes while she pretended not to hear Dad ranting from the next room. Laughing with Mila over burnt pies and undercooked turkeys. Now, it was just a kitchen. Just drywall and counters and ghosts. There was still a photo on the counter, one of the whole family, taken 2 Christmases ago. I remembered paying the photographer's deposit, the matching outfits, the fake smiles. I also remembered how they cropped me out when they posted it online. I stared at the picture for a long moment, then flipped it face down. By noon, a few cars started rolling in, some serious buyers, a few nosy neighbors. And then, them. They showed up in Dad's old Chevy, packed in like they were on some twisted family road trip. Emily got out first, her face puffy, eyes hidden behind oversized sunglasses. Paul followed, scowling like he'd been dragged along just to play tough. Then my parents stepped out. Mom looked older, worn down in a way that went beyond exhaustion. Dad still walked like he owned the block, like pride alone would keep the house from being sold. He spotted me right away. "Justin," he called, his voice low and tense. "We need to talk. Now." I didn't move. He marched up the walkway, Paul shadowing him like always. "You're really going through with this?" he asked. "You're going to humiliate your own family? Over what? Some misunderstanding? Some grudge?" I met his eyes for the first time in years. "It's not a grudge," I said, calm and steady. "It's a pattern. And it ends today." "You ungrateful little," he started. I held up a hand. "Don't. Just, don't." Emily joined them now. Her voice cracked. "I'm going to lose my scholarship over this. I already had to drop 2 classes. Why are you doing this to us?" I turned to her. "I paid for your first 3 years. Every semester. Every textbook. Every late fee. You never said thank you. Not once." "I didn't," she started, but I cut her off. "You went online and told strangers I was mentally unstable," I said, pulling out my phone. "You lied for money. And now you want sympathy." Her face fell. Tears welled up, but I didn't look away. Then Mom finally spoke. Her voice was raw. "We're a family, Justin. Families don't do this to each other." "No," I said. "Families don't take like this. You took everything, my time, my money, my trust. And the moment I stopped giving, you all called me selfish." That's when the auctioneer's voice cut through the air, sharp, clipped, and all business. "We'll begin the auction in 5 minutes. Dad glanced around like the ground beneath him had shifted. His confidence cracked just a little. "You can't do this," he said. "You wouldn't even have this house if it weren't for us." I nodded. "You're right," I told him. "So I'm taking it back." They just stood there on the driveway, stunned, frozen in place, powerless for the first time in years. And I walked away. The house sold within the hour. A retired couple from out of state, looking to be closer to their grandkids. Paid in full, no fuss. I signed the paperwork, handed Matt the keys, and never once looked over my shoulder. 3 weeks later, the moving truck pulled up. My parents tried to fight it, claimed they had some kind of rights. But the court order was crystal clear. They had 30 days from the sale date. No exceptions. No loopholes. They didn't even bother to pack everything. They just grabbed what they could and left the rest behind in messy piles. Years of junk. Stacks of old trophies, busted appliances, boxes full of memories no one wanted to claim. One of the movers found an old journal of mine in a box labeled junk. It was from high school. I flipped through it. Every page was filled with teenage hope, dreams and goals scribbled in messy handwriting. Get into college. Start a business. Buy a house. Take care of my family. Funny how none of those dreams ended the way I pictured them. I donated the furniture. Tossed out the rest. Mila helped me close everything out, tie off all the loose ends. She'd been the only one who stayed neutral through it all. And the only one I genuinely trusted. When it was finally over, she pulled me in for a long, quiet hug. "You did the right thing," she whispered. "Even if it doesn't feel like it yet." And she was right. It didn't feel good, not in the way I used to imagine justice would feel. There was no big speech. No final scene where someone clapped and admitted I'd been right all along. Just silence. A cold, echoing kind of silence that, slowly, turned into peace. Not the kind of peace that knocks the wind out of you, more like the slow unraveling of a knot you'd forgotten was tightening in your chest. After that, I moved. Bought a loft in a different city. Smaller, quieter. But mine. No hidden bills. No guilt attached. Eventually, the calls stopped. The emails dried up. Even the bitterness wore off with time. I didn't hate them. I just disconnected. Like finally cutting the last frayed thread of a rope that had been dragging me underwater for far too long. One night, I sat out on my balcony, sipping tea, watching the warm glow of windows in the building across from mine. I thought back to that last Thanksgiving, Paul's speech, the fake smiles, how they all acted like we were some picture-perfect family. Like they had no clue the glue holding it all together was already starting to crack. And it hit me. We were never really a family. Not in the way that words supposed to mean something. We were a system. One that only worked as long as I stayed silent, stayed useful, stayed small. But not anymore. Now, they'd have to figure out how to stand on their own, without me holding it all up. A few months later, I got an email from Emily. Short. No frills. I don't expect you to reply. I just wanted to say, I get it now. And I'm sorry. I read it twice. Then one more time. And I archived it. Not out of anger. Not to be cold. But because I didn't need anything else from them. No apology. No closure. I had already found that on my own. And for the first time in my life, that was enough.